Go with the flow.
You got it.
Okay. All right. Okay, everybody, here we are back with episode 31 in the series, Let's Discover God Together. And I'm trying to make sure we get as many different viewpoints and opinions on different things as possible. And I was blessed today to run across Jim Johnson, who is of the Christian Universalist beliefs. And I'll turn it over to him and let him introduce himself to you and tell you about his journey, where he started, where it took him, and where he's at right now. Jim, it's all you.
Okay, well, thank you. I appreciate this opportunity. It's quite complicated, I guess. I won't take you through 100% of it, but I am a Kentuckian with roots in central Kentucky on my father's side and in Appalachia on my mother's side. And my mother's father was an Appalachian Church of God pastor. And I lived with he and my maternal grandmother a couple of different times for a year at a time. Went to school there. My dad was a lifer in the Navy, and mom accompanied him occasionally. I obviously uh, learned some things as a child, probably from my grandfather. I don't remember anything that he said. I just remember that he was a wonderful man and he loved me and he was kind and he acted like what I thought and still do that a Christian ought to. So I got that. And then I grew up in central Kentucky, and my dad's father was a Johnson and came from the Johnstons with a T. They dropped the T once they came to America. But my heritage goes all the way back to the Johnstons of Aberdeen, Scotland, around the 1500s, and John Knox. So we have always been Presbyterian. And at one point or another, uh, 1 point through 5 point, tulip, Calvinist. Uh, I, as a kid, didn't know anything about that. I'll just be honest with you. I am on a journey to try to get back there to that childlike faith, because what I remember as a kid was going to church with Granny and Granddaddy at the Presbyterian church. And I don't remember anything except positive and some singing and some people saying hello to one another and going to Bible school. And I don't really remember what they taught me about Jesus, other than my greatest and fondest memory of Presbyterian Church Bible School was the little cups of vanilla ice cream that they gave them. And so I've got fond memories of that. But seriously, that sort of shaped me, I guess, in my what I call childlike faith. At 16, my dad was a lifer, as I say, in the Navy, and he was also an alcoholic. And dad also had a rare blood vessel disease that caused him to come in and out of the Navy. He tried to make it. He was a signalman on a ship, and they, worked 12-hour shifts, and his was losing the blood flow to his fingers. He got out of the Navy, had 14 operations in over a period of about 3 years at the VA hospital in Louisville. And they thought they had it corrected, and they were either going to have to give him a full retirement disability package or let him come back in, which they did. So he goes back in the Navy, and he was serving aboard the USS Intrepid in Vietnam in 1966, and this disease started in his feet and legs. The doctor aboard didn't have any idea what to do with it. They flew him to Bethesda Naval Hospital, and he died at age 39 of a heart attack. Uh, they really didn't know exactly. They didn't tell my mom what happened. I don't think they actually knew, because they never did nail down what the root cause of his problem was. But anyway, that brings me to this: the funeral. My granddaddy Johnson had died at 1964, and this was 66, and I'd been going to church with Granny, not regularly like I used to. Uh, so when Dad died, the Presbyterian pastor and all the people there were just so wonderful, and it led me to back to perhaps some faith. Um, Shortly after that, I was telling somebody about my dad's death and that he died drunk. They had let him out of the hospital for a weekend just to pass, and it wasn't long enough to come home to fly to Kentucky. And poor guy got out and got drunk. And when they picked him up on the streets and took him back to the hospital, he had a heart attack within that night, within an hour or two, and died. Well, some wonderful Calvinist thought that I should know that obviously, since my dad had died drunk, that he was in hell. And I said, "What? You know, my dad grew up in church and went to Sunday school, and I've got records of his baptism, and he was always in church." And I said, "I just can't believe that. What makes you think that?" And they said, "Well, God says that the Bible says that God chooses those that will be saved, and then He chooses several people to go to hell, and you don't have any choice, no free will whatsoever. It's providential. You'll go to hell, and your dad's one of them." Well, it threw me for a loop, and to give credit to my church back home, I found out later it was not a member of there. It was somebody that knew I was Presbyterian, and my church does not believe that. In fact, most Presbyterian USA do not go that far. Uh, they think that Calvin's words have been twisted, that he really didn't believe that, and so forth. Whatever. So I left the church completely. Didn't want anything to do with it. Went in the Navy myself. I was sole surviving son, and my dad died on active duty. So this was 1968, and I was not eligible for the draft because of being a sole surviving son. But I decided for whatever reason I wanted to go. So I signed a waiver, and they let me go in the Navy. I just could not go into a war zone. Shortly after that, I met this little gal from over in Appalachia, where my wife's from, back when we were kids, when I was spending those couple of years with my maternal grandparents. And I don't remember exactly how it happened. I think it was a first cousin reintroduced me right before I went in the Navy. And it was just boom, one of those, wow, you can't explain it. I mean, this
Yeah.
cutest girl I've ever seen in my life. And she agreed to go out with me. A few months later, when she graduated from high school, we got married. Moved to California, and our daughter was born out there. We spent about 2.5 years, and it was probably the best thing that could ever happen to me because it totally separated me from uh, a life that I just wasn't happy with. I was just confused in every respect. Drinking, I said I would never drink because of my poor dad, but I was. And long story short, I guess on that end of it, she had grown up a Baptist. In fact, I'd gone to church with her family uh, some of the time during those 2 years I spent over there. And I trusted her because I saw Christ in her. I didn't trust this God thing or the Christ thing or any other thing, but I saw Christ in her. Like I had my grandfather before that, and my Presbyterian grandfather, and my uh, Methodist grandmother, who was a Wesleyan, can trace her roots all the way back to John Wesley. I didn't trust Methodism or Baptist or whatever, but I trusted the people I saw Jesus in. So I found that at age 30, I was probably had this gene or at least a propensity to not know when to quit drinking. And I was becoming just like my dad. And I had 2 kids by then. And I said, I'm just not going to do this. So we joined a church, a Southern Baptist church that was teetotaler. people. They didn't even believe that Jesus turned water into wine. They believed that the wine was actually just grape juice. And I, being raised Presbyterian, I didn't believe that, but so what? It was a good, safe place for me. We stayed there for years. Our kids were raised there. I often had difficulties with it because I didn't believe a lot of their theology. But I had a pastor that loved me, and he and I disagreed. And he even came across the desk after me one time. I never will forget. I was during the 90s, and I was voting one way and he was voting the other. And he came across the desk and said, "There's no way that you can be both a Christian and a Democrat." But he and I made up, and we were good. And he understood that I didn't buy his theology, but we were good. We finally had to leave there. He retired. A new guy came in, and he was deep into politics by the time the 90s and early 2000s came along. And I didn't hear much about God or Jesus or anybody else. It was just politics. We tried another evangelical church, then another evangelical church. And I guess around 2016 is when I finally said, I don't see any Christianity and Christians. So I'm done. And I'll just have to figure out what's going on. That brings me to where I am today and have been for quite a few years. I am a Christian Universalist by childlike faith. I am also a deist who believes that God sometimes intervenes. And finally, I am a Jesus-leaning, hopeful agnostic. And I don't know if you'd want me to go one step at a time and explain what I mean by those, or what's your
Yeah, I think that might be a
thinking
good
there?
idea in case somebody
Steve?
doesn't get it.
Yeah. Well, I think the first part of the Universalist is probably as early as the 80s. I'm 75, born in 1950. So by the 80s, I just, I heard it in sermons about eternal damnation and how that you had to accept Christ, and people who didn't walk down the aisle a certain way and say the certain prayers and so forth before they died, and the people who never heard of Jesus, even if it was, wonderful people like Aunt Bee on Andy Griffith's show. If she hadn't accepted Jesus and she was going to pay for her own sins and not pay like we would, say get a traffic ticket and we pay $100, or even if it's bad enough, we'll go to jail for a day or two or whatever. If the crime's a little worse, might go to jail for a week or whatever. No, what God loved us so much is what I was taught, is that he decided that if we didn't do exactly what the white evangelicals said, that when we died, that we would go to hell and we'd be there for eternity, and we would be tortured and we would be tormented. And when I think of that, I think of taking a little innocent child, 5 years old or so, and pulling her fingernails out, and taking the ice pick and jabbing it in her eyes. And that's to me, and that's what I saw of God. That's what I see of evangelicals who believe in eternal damnation. So I said, I've got to know more about this. So I've got a um, cousin, second cousin, my dad's first cousin, who was a school teacher in Florida, and she retired and she wanted her doctorate by the time she was 50. So she and her husband sold out everything. Their kids were grown. They packed up, moved to Lafayette, Indiana. She got her doctorate from Purdue. She became a professor there, and she also became a Presbyterian pastor. So I have sort of, leaned on her down through the years, and she put me onto a book about Christian Universalism. And she didn't push me in any way. She didn't even say, "Hey, Jim, this is what I believe," whatever. She's so good at that. And by the way, she's 80 some years old and she's still pastoring a church outside Lafayette, Presbyterian Church. And I read that book and it made sense to me. So I decided that I was going to go down the track of research, and I have. I've researched George MacDonald, who is probably the father of modern, not modern day, but last few centuries of Christian evangelicalism. And I even went back as far as the first 500 years that there was no such thing as eternal torment. Universalism was the what people thought. That's what they believed, and it was in maybe I don't know what was it 325 that Constantine and the bishops all decided to vote on what they believed, and they decided that, there had to be a hell, there had to be some punishment, and there had to be, the boogeyman. Otherwise, nobody was going to believe it. And there was too many religions out there and all this. So we're just going to have this. And man has constantly, in my opinion, perverted the original words and acts of Jesus Christ. So that's why I'm a Christian Universalist. I'm a Christian because I believe in Christ. I'm a Universalist because I don't believe that there's any, hell, whatever that is. I don't know. But I do not believe that anyone would choose in their right mind, nor would a loving God who is known as God, not just a loving God, but God is love, would choose to send one of his children to torment for eternity. It's just, you got to use the logical side of your brain too, not just the emotional side. So I've studied, and all I do is just believe more. I don't know how much more you can believe. I'm 100% convinced that when we die, if there is a God, and I believe there is, if Jesus really is God, then and he died on the cross, and he did it as an example of love, pure love. What other example could you give than to die for a kid? And that's love. So he didn't just say, "I am love." He showed us that he's love. And if all this winds up being true, then I think there's an afterlife, and we will, wherever that is, whatever that is, we'll spend it with Christ. The part about the deist is, I don't know if you know any of you, but our founding fathers, a lot of them were deists. They considered themselves deists. Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson and quite a few at that time. And what a deist basically believes is that God set it all in motion and then hands off, and we just do our thing. And at some point, God will end it all. We're under the age of grace right now. The age of grace will end, and God will intervene and take over. But in the meantime, however long that is, God just stands back and lets things go. Well, that's sort of how I see it, except I really do believe, and this is through faith, that occasionally God intervenes. And therefore, I pray about everything. Everything. Doesn't make any difference what I do. I pray every morning. Something that comes to my mind, or somebody that comes to my mind, I pray for. Do I believe that my prayer will cause, somebody's cancer to go away? If I did, I would be in Memphis, Tennessee right now, out front St. Jude Hospital, praying that they would let me in, because if I believed that, I'd go in there with childlike faith. And who else has childlike faith other than a little kid? And together, we would ask God to heal that little 5-year-old kid. And guess what would happen? God would absolutely heal that little kid. So, no, for whatever reason, God doesn't. He allows us to go through problems in our life and lose loved ones and have savage things go wrong with our body, or and what's even worse, not just us, but watching a mate or a child or a grandkid or something like that go through it. And that's, if you want to talk about hell, I don't know what hell is, but maybe that's what hell is because it's pretty tough. I guess the last part is I am a Jesus leaning, hopeful agnostic. And what I mean by that is I'm Jesus leaning in that I do believe this thing about Jesus. And the reason I do is because my childlike faith that I established at Grandpa Bryant's house, my mom's dad, over in Appalachian, Kentucky, and at the Presbyterian Church in Central Kentucky, and watching my grandparents. Now that's childlike faith. So I take this Jesus thing with childlike faith. I cut out all of the bull crap. I just take what makes sense, that if Jesus really was who he said he was, and he came here to show us love, to show us what love really is, then I don't take all this other foolishness. That's man-made that's brought into that. So Jesus leaning, hopeful that that's true, yet having no way of knowing if it's true logically. So I'm an agnostic. Do I believe in God? Yeah. Do I know? Do I know that God is real? No. I'm an agnostic. I don't know if God's real. I will as soon as I die. Listen, and my wife and I both are planning on getting cremated. And here where we spend our winters in Florida, they've got a crematory down the road that's $795. And if both of you will go at the same time, it's a buy one, get one free. So that's what I told her that one time, and I don't know if she thought it was funny or not. But anyway, the illustration is if you heard that I died, and I went to a crematorium, and I came out of there with a little jug of dust, and then you hear that 5 days to 2 weeks later that I live again, that I was totally resurrected. And I've been there. See, I don't believe this near death stuff, but if I've truly died and resurrected, then I will tell you exactly what's going to happen to you when you die. But between now and then, I can't do it. I can just guess like everybody else. So there's
We
the story in a
appreciate that,
nutshell.
by the way, Jim.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. But that's sort of
I
it in a nutshell.
very good. I got a little bit lost, and it might be just me on the deist part. So I want to go back and revisit that a little bit because I thought what you were saying as a deist is somebody who believes in God, but then God's hands off.
Yeah, that's what I said. I got off track. Like Benjamin Franklin, for instance, was
Okay.
a probably an atheist
Yeah.
most of his life, and then I can't remember the name of the preacher that came to the United States. He was part of John Wesley's crowd. It's called The Great Awakening. We saw the movie the other day, and I'd advise anybody to go see it. It's wonderful. But he always, I mean, he was sold out for God. This preacher was, and Benjamin liked him, and they did a lot of things together and all of that. But he didn't really believe, and Benjamin Franklin finally came to the point that he did believe, but sort of as an agnostic, that God does intervene sometimes. He came away from that, believing that God does. So that's what I say is, instead of a deist, which is 100%, I do allow that God does intervene.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. Now that makes more sense. And that is a mouthful. I did a little bit in Christian Universalism and even participated in a little bit myself.
mhm.
And I got to say, and for myself, by the way, if somebody said, well, what are you? I would have a hard time putting it into words and
Mhm.
describing it, what are my beliefs? But I never heard anybody say I'm a Christian Universalist who's a deist and a hopeful Jesus agnostic. I mean, that
Right,
is a mouthful.
right, right, right. And there's just no way to pin it down to one thing. I could tell you I'm
I know. I get it.
Presbyterian, but then you go look up Presbyterian and oh, well, are you this kind or that kind or the other? I was in a
Amen.
Baptist church for years. Well, what kind of Baptist were you? You know, and
Well,
things.
interesting because tomorrow I'm going to be interviewing a rabbi, and then I
Oh,
hope to interview at least one person from Islam faith,
uh-huh.
but and on and on wherever I can find somebody. But I have interviewed a lot of people who would say that to you that they are Christian, and as it stands today, according to research, that's the largest in the world. It's 31% of the population
Right,
considers themselves Christians.
right,
And the next closest to that at this point in time today is Islam, which is
right,
underneath. But yet, let's face it, within that 31% of Christians, we also know that there is 45,000 different denominations of Christianity just in the US, 45,000 plus. As you pointed out, even when you break down the denominations and say, well, I'm Presbyterian or I'm Baptist or whatever,
mhm,
you could break those down even further and say,
right,
I'm a
right,
Presbyterian, but I don't believe this or I do believe that. So when we say Christian, it's a little bit loose term,
right.
because it varies
Little
so
ambiguous.
much within that. Yeah, it's
Right,
ambiguous. There's the
right,
word.
right.
And I do think for those listening, just as a little education to them, and I don't know a lot, and I don't know how much you know, but you'll find if you research into this, there's actually Christian Universalist and just
Right,
Universalist.
right,
There's a
right,
difference between the
right.
two.
There is, and I
My
could
understanding,
explain that, but it's
you say you
maybe
can?
Christian Universalist. No, I said I could explain that,
Go
but
right
that's
ahead, because I'm not
well,
sure I'd do it right if you got a better understanding.
and this is just rudimentary. Okay,
Yeah,
um, a universalist, as I understand it, believes that there's no such thing as Jesus being God and having to go through Jesus. A Christian universalist believes that Jesus is God and that every knee shall bow and every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. And we add in parentheses, even beyond the grave. So
yeah,
that basically takes care of it. A universalist, Unitarian Universalist, like say, they don't necessarily worship Jesus in any way. It's it could be you could be a Buddhist or a Hindu or Muslim or whatever you wanted to, and go to their church because they believe everybody goes to heaven. Well, we do too. It's
yeah.
just that we believe that Jesus really is God.
Yeah, it basically is a matter of, as I understand it, just to put it in slightly different words, it's not saying anything different, but Christian Universalists do believe that Jesus was our Savior. He was here to save us. You're still going to accept him as your
Right.
Savior, go to heaven, and
Yes.
you will do it
Yes.
sometime, sooner or
Yes.
later.
Yes.
Universalist believes that he wasn't necessarily,
Right.
I don't know why I'm blanking out on the word. It's not
Oh,
Savior.
good,
It's,
good guy. Yeah.
yeah, whatever. I got CRS.
Divine.
Anyway,
He was not divine. Yeah. They
yeah.
believe he was not divine. He was just
Well,
a good guy.
and what's the other words? The Jews think he is not. Oh, it'll come to me. But anyway, my point is the universalists, like you said, skip that altogether.
Hmm.
You don't need to worry about even Jesus anymore. You're just all going
Right.
to go to heaven, period.
Sure. Sure. Right.
And their makeup is you could be Islam, you could be
Sure.
Jewish, you could
Right.
be any one
Right.
of the different denominations of Christianity. You could be a Christian Universalist and go to
Right.
their church.
Yes.
Doesn't
Yeah.
matter.
Right.
And everybody's going to heaven.
Right. Yeah.
It's funny because you were talking about your research, and the same thing happened to me. When I started doing the research, I started going back and looking as early back as I could find out. And that requires going back to, around the time Jesus died and what was being taught then. And like you said, I think there was six churches then, and the majority of them, at least four out of six, they were pretty much teaching what Christian Universalists teach. And you go to find out that in all our Bible, and again, I'm not slamming any Bibles or any religions. I want to make that perfectly clear here because, in my opinion, it's whatever works for you to get you there in a relationship with God. That's a
Hmm.
good thing.
Right.
But we've taken in most of those Bible translations and put in them words like hell
Hmm.
that didn't really exist. If you go back to the original Hebrew and Greek, those words are not there.
Right.
There's actually four different words, and none of them mean you're going to burn in eternal constant
Right.
torment. None of them mean that. And we could go on all day talking about things like that, but it was in that research that I went, wait a minute, we're twisting what was originally taught. And I think we're going to find the same thing. I watched a guy, I can't remember his name right off the bat, but if you want one, comment and I'll find it, who studied back all the ancient religions. He took
Hmm.
Judaism back to the beginning, he took Islam back to their beginning of theirs, Christianity back to the most ancient texts he could find. And according to him, what he found was they all had one big similarity. They all believed that the God that created the world and us and everything in it was all about love.
Hmm.
And that
Right.
was it,
Right.
period.
Yeah.
And it all started the same, even though somehow we found ways to make it into divisions and make
Right.
it scary.
Hmm.
You
Yeah.
you had quite the journey, Jim. If
Hmm.
you somebody came to you and say, Jim, I'm confused, you
Hmm.
know,
Yeah.
I, I hear there's this religion, that belief, that belief. I really want to know
Hmm.
who is the real God? How do I figure out, you know,
Hmm.
do you have any advice you'd give them?
Well, yeah, actually, I do, but I don't have it available yet. I am writing a book, and it's called
Wonderful.
"Where Did God Come From?" Well, that's the subtitle. The title is Caspia, and the subtitle is "Where Did God Come From?" with a question mark. And I'm piddling around with it, and I've been working with a publisher, and old and on a fixed income, and I'm not going to spend a ton of money because anybody out there that's ever written a book, you probably already know that new authors sell about 1% are
Mhm.
ever looked at and their books bought. So don't spend a lot of money. Uh, but anyway, I am working on that. And where did God come from? And yes, I've thought a lot about that because, you know, if God, however He started Earth, if it was to allow uh, evolution to just take place and go with the flow, like I say, as a deist, uh, that's good. Or did He just light the match, or did He actually uh, uh, in 7 days create 6 days create the entire earth, which I believe absolutely could be if God wanted to. It's no big deal. When I was a kid, I watched The Twilight Zone, and I never will forget an episode of Superman there. For some reason, they needed a diamond, and he took a coal and he squeezed that coal in his hands and he broke it open. There was a diamond there. So yeah, and if
Yeah.
Superman can do that, surely God can. So
Amen.
but we don't know. We honestly don't know. We think we're so darn smart. Atheists, I have atheists. The atheists that are kind and want to discuss things rather than to try to get me unsaved or whatever, that their deal is. I like to discuss it with them, and there are just atheists that are just pretty much just given up on this. Is just, I can't logically figure it out. There's no proof, so it's just not there. That's why I call myself an agnostic.
Yeah.
And if you spend enough time with an atheist, um, you'll usually find that they're actually an agnostic. Now, there
Yeah.
are some that truly are atheists, and for whatever reason, and I'm not doubting their word, but I think that we, as human beings, just have something in us that's not that we can't understand. It's more than cells and uh, molecules and genes and genetics and whatever. I think there's just something in us, and it comes from somewhere. And I love to play with it. It's just for fun. But the theory of the ancient astronauts. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of that. It's just for fun if you ever wanted to, and that's basically that from some other planet came here and sort of helped us along. And with that, sort of for the fun of it, that's where I make my book. And I go a lot. I go into some pretty theological depth and research, but I do it in a novel type way, just in a storytelling, and we'll
Yeah.
see where it goes.
Maybe I could get my wife to read your book once it's done because, I do a lot of reading, a lot of studying, but she
Uh-huh.
doesn't like reading my kind of book. She
Yeah,
likes the fictions and the novels. So
fiction. Yeah,
maybe that's
sure,
just what she needs.
sure, absolutely. I'll keep that in mind. I'll let you know.
I'll find a customer for you.
There you go. Yeah, yeah.
Well, Jim, I can't thank you enough for this. Hopefully, it's been insightful for somebody and it's going to help lead them down their journey
Mhm.
because I think everybody's got a journey and some of us are actively pursuing it and some of us don't even realize we're on it and it's
Right,
okay.
right.
It doesn't
Exactly.
matter. You're
Yeah,
going to get there eventually.
exactly. And I
Yeah.
will say this, you had asked me earlier when we talked, did I want to give any way that people could get in touch with me if they've got a question or anything? Um, I don't do a lot of that, and I definitely am not going to argue and try to get you saved, and I don't want you to try to get me saved. You and I talked about that, but if somebody is interested or has a question, I'd be happy to answer. And the way I do it is through uh, an email, and it's bluearrowart at gmail.com. Bluearrowart at gmail.com. You're welcome
And
to
Jim, if you want
ask
me
me.
to, I have your email address.
Sure.
I'll put that in the description under the video.
Absolutely.
But
Yeah.
just be forewarned, once you put your email out
Yeah.
there, who knows who might email you? Just
Yeah,
a
I know.
reminder.
That's okay. I don't mind.
All right,
Okay.
very good. You know how to use the block button on email?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That's not a problem.
Oh, hold on just a little bit, Jim.
Okay,
I'm going
sure.
to end the recording, but I want to tell you something
Okay.
off recording.
Okay.
Everybody, again, hope you're having a great, blessed day. Soon we're going to be having a rabbi on here, maybe somebody from the Islam religion, but we're going to keep trying to show you as many different ways we all have of getting to that one important thing, in my opinion, which is a one-on-one relationship with God. Talk to y'all soon.